Before we begin, let me start off by telling you a quick story. Imagine you're sitting in a warehouse somewhere, and you're tied to a chair, and suddenly the door swings open, and a man enters in, and he says, "Hey, when is Joseph Anderson gonna release his Witcher 3 video?" And you obviously say, I don't know. So he puts a bazooka to your brain, and says, "I want an answer now, or I end you." Welcome to pre-production. So the harrowing thing about pre-production is that if you're a designer, this is the time when you come up with a lot of answers to questions that you don't have the answer for, and if you don't, people will either be disappointed in you, or worst case scenario, you might just be fired. So what do? You just make up answers on the spot. The reason why is because during this time, a couple things happen. The designers, whether they be the narrative designers or level designers or whatever, usually come up with an idea for the game, a way the game's gonna run, and then they tell the artists how that's gonna work. Usually the narrative designers work with the concept artist to create some sort of concept art for the game to see how the UI might look, how the game might function, how the enemies might look, so on and so forth. They're in constant communication to make sure that the art reflects what the tone of the game is. At the same time, the game designers are talking with the programmers and saying, hey, these are the mechanics that we want. Programmers are then making prototypes, which they show to the game designers, and the game designers make sure that these prototypes match the style of the game that they're going for. But the most important department in this stage is design. Design gets to have the final say on features, on art, on basically almost everything, and oftentimes you're saying yes and no to things without having the full picture on what the game's gonna look like, and that's weirdly normal. It's this area of confusion where people will ask you a question and you know that they want a certain answer, but if you tell them the answer that you've been told to tell them, they will get upset with you, maybe, or maybe they'll be happy, but you don't know those people. So it's just a lot of craziness all the time. Speaking of craziness, let me show you what I have planned so far for the first 2 weeks of pre-alpha, and yeah, we'll see where we can go from there. This entire video is not going to be in front of the green screen this time, because I don't have the energy to do that. It takes a lot of editing to do that, and I think my computer and my phone are about to die. I'm recording on my phone, by the way, so it's going to be really awkward if I try to do that. So, yeah. So this is this is kind of like the game design document that the whole game will run off of. It's not a perfect one-to-one of a normal game design document, but I feel like it is more than enough for what we need. If I need to, I can definitely create a game design document. I have done that before. So this is a game that I'm working on with a few friends of mine, and this is more structured more like a typical game design document with project scope, brief, and all that. However, usually a game design document is very beneficial for communicating your idea with other people. However, this is a self-funded project and a self-made project. I really don't need to communicate this idea to many people, except for you, the audience, so reorganizing this and reformatting this will be something that I do if I feel like it. So here we have the narrative design. Essentially, the game takes place in the world of my D&D campaign that I've been running for a little bit. I think like 3 years total. It's been 2 campaigns, but essentially it's the same thing. So yeah, this is just a bit of a background. And a little bit of character development or character design for the protagonist. Now, what's interesting here is that I've decided to make the protagonist nameless and faceless. You do see the protagonist, however, I would like the figure to be relatively, I don't know if androgynous is the right word, but I think the word I'm looking for is vague, if that makes sense. I hope I'm not being offensive. But the idea is you have a photo in your pocket of 3 figures. 3 figures. A woman, a man, and a young girl, and you honestly could be either one. This might be something that I tamper with. Maybe each person will have different attributes, and you don't pick your attributes. Maybe they'll have a bonus certain attributes. If you're a woman, maybe you have a higher dexterity, higher intelligence. Well, I don't know. Or if you're a child, you have the highest dexterity but a lower strength. Oh, I could do like... No, never mind. But yeah, essentially, story-wise, you can be either of these 3, and it's not made like specific. Usually, probably you're the man, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna make it clear. Yeah. So this just goes over a certain amount of stuff. So the best way that I like to design games is go from the top down. What this means is have a graph where I go all the way from the very beginning of the game, from where the game opens. You double click on the exe and you open up the game, to the very end of the game when you quit out of the game. The first thing that you'll see when you open the game is the main menu. There'll be 4 buttons. There'll be new game, load game, settings, and quit. If you press new game, it'll create a new game from the beginning. We'll get into that in a little bit. If you have load game, it'll load a previous saved state. It won't have a list of load states. It won't have a list of previous saves you have to load from. It'll just reload the most recent save state that you made. I'm doing this because it's just easier that way, and also I don't see a reason why you would need to load a certain save state. Maybe for experimentation on builds, but even then the game will have varied gameplay, but not that varied to where I think having the ability to choose which save state you want to load from is that important. But this is important to note because this means I will need a save system. And that's going to get funky later, but for now, I'm not too worried about that. For settings, it'll just be a few settings. There'll be audio and visual settings. For audio, just a sound effects volume slider, dialogue volume slider, and background music volume slider. I have some experience with Unity's audio system, especially when like routing it to certain... They're not called buses, but essentially it works the same as routing to buses. For visual settings, I haven't messed with that, but I feel like Unity has a pretty easy way of doing it. I know they have a quality system, like a video quality system that I can mess with. Oh, by the way, I am using Unity. This is I don't know if it was obvious. I know there's been a lot of controversy with Unity, but it's the game engine that I'm very familiar with, and I'd much rather build my own system from the ground up in an engine that I know well, rather than using Unreal and wrestling with their systems, or using Godot and have to learn an entirely new game engine. Although that does sound like a fun project idea, it's just not within the scope of this project. And just quit the game. I hope that was self-explanatory. So the very beginning thing that happens when you press new game is that it'll have the intro cutscene. I'm going to keep this as simple as possible for right now. It'll just be scrolling text with the narration and background audio. Maybe some flashes of art here and there. I might have to hire someone for that, but for now, this is just a maybe. Right after that, you are spawned in the tutorial. Essentially, you are in the tutorial level, and you have to fight off enemies, right? So this is where we get into player design. So for movement, you'll have top-down movement, normal walking. You'll also have sprinting, which requires stamina. Your movement speed is determined by the dexterity stat, which means we need to have an attribute system. Keep all of these in mind, because we're going to have to get to these sooner or later. Dash mechanic includes iframes, so it can be somewhat Souls-like. Maybe armor. We're probably not going to have armor, for being honest, but maybe. So shooting, you'll have crossbows versus ammo. A crossbow determines the speed of the projectile, the time between shots, and can potentially add extra damage to a projectile. Ammo or projectile determines the damage and or any lingering effects like burning, poison on floor, etc., etc. Left click or right click fires once, after which the crossbow cannot be fired for a small amount of time between shots. And there's no reloading. I hate reloading. We're just gonna have a small time between attacks, and this time between attacks will either increase or decrease depending on how good your crossbow is. Melee attacks, you either right click or left click, and it'll either do a small radius of damage, like a small arc of damage, or it'll do or attack enemy in front of player. It'll just do like a single attack on the enemy. There'll be small recharge time, a small recharge time between attacks, and different weapons change how much damage the weapon does, along with the modifier that's based on the strength. So, yeah. Oh, for crossbow, I feel like the time between shots. Shit. I can't. What? Time between shots is dependent on dexterity stat. Essentially, I'm trying to integrate the abilities and attribute system into as much of the game as possible. That's the basic idea. You will have an inventory. There are 3 slots in the player inventory. One for the right click slot, one for the middle slot for ammo, or this is usually for if you want to have potions or stuff like that, you can use that. What if you want to have 2 crossbows? Can I allow 2 crossbows? So essentially it's not going to be 3 slots, it's going to be 4, but you'll have 1 slot for right click, 1 slot for left click, right click ammo, left click ammo. If there's melee, there won't be an ammo here, but that'll be it. So there is going to be a chest though. There'll be 4 pages of inventory, 1 for melee weapons, 1 for ammo, 1 for crossbows, and 1 for traps, which means we need a trap system. Like that. During daytime, which means there's a day and night system, chests will open so that players can use any items in there during nighttime. Player cannot access the chest and must work with whatever they have in their inventory. Now we get to the attributes. Are you caught up yet? Because this shit gets weirder. You have strength, dexterity, and endurance. Sorry, what about intelligence and all that? No, I'm trying to keep this thing as simple as possible because the idea is... Actually, I don't know what the idea is, but if I am able to make a successful project, and if I am able to use this project as a proof of concept and potentially get funding, I might definitely look into increasing, but right now I can't think of a reason to have intelligence or charisma or any of the other D&D stats that I'm kind of basing this off of. But essentially strength will affect your melee damage and your health. Dexterity will affect your speed and dash stamina cost. And endurance will affect your health and stamina. Strength will have a minor effect on health, but it will have some effect on health because if you're very strong, chances are you don't die that easy. Or maybe unless you're a glass cannon, which in that case you absolutely can. We'll say it has like a health bonus. So yeah, so strength does affect your health. The reason being is I want each attribute to at least impact 2 things. Otherwise, I don't want the attribute to be there. So yeah. Now we get to the day and night system. A time tracker keeps track of the current time. During daytime, there's no enemies. You can explore the map freely. And by the map, I don't mean just the area that you fight the monsters in, but like the different shops as well. Here I have different shops. I have blacksmith, librarian, alchemist, so on and so forth. There might even be a resource exploration thing, which is a whole other concept that I'm going to experiment with, but we'll see how that works. You'll be able to interact with NPCs, you'll be able to have weapon upgrades, and you'll be able to switch out ammo or your blade or crossbows. There's going to be attribute upgrades during this time, trap development, and maybe if we have time, resource gathering. During nighttime, you're either inside the tavern that you're protecting, because this is the Untitled Tavern, or I think it makes more sense to be outside the tavern and making sure enemies can't get to the tavern. I think that makes more sense. So I'll have to think about that. But essentially monsters spawn and you have to survive till morning. Which means we have enemy spawning system. The rate of spawning changes based on the number of nights survived. The enemy spawning rate changes for each enemy. Enemies need to be ranked from basic to complex, and more complex enemies need to spawn as the number of nights survived increases. So essentially what that means is there's a list of enemies, which is right here. You have the slasher, spitter, the combo, mutated spitter, mutated slasher, whatever. But essentially these enemies are ranked from basic to more complex. And as the nights go on, as you survive more nights, more complex enemies will spawn. And in lore, that's described as the enemies are mutating. Now we get to the weapon system, which, bear in mind, we're still in the tutorial area, if you remember. There's range crossbows, time between shots, the number of shots per fire, number of enemies bullets can pass through before vanishing. Essentially, if I want to have a crossbow modifier where I can shoot 1 bullet and it passes through several enemies, it might not kill them, but at least it'll pass through them. That's something that I want to have. The ammo will determine the damage type, whether it's single target or AoE, the damage amount, and the bullet speed. The melee blades determine the damage amount, the damage type, whether it's single target or semicircle AoE, and it'll choose whether it wants to knock back enemies on hit or not. And along with this, in the tutorial, I also want to have... What? Oh. NPC interaction. There's gonna be 2 kinds. There's gonna be shouts and there's gonna be dialogue system. There's not gonna be a complicated dialogue system for this. Essentially, you will be given a quest and you can choose to embark on it, which will affect your playstyle, or you can choose not to, which will also affect your playstyle. and there may be different lines that the NPCs say to you based on whether you choose to accept it or not, but you are given the quest. The quest is yours. Whether you do it or not is up to you. Essentially, there won't be like a I accept or I don't accept. It'll just be a here's a line of text describing the dialogue or describing the quest. Have fun. So for shouts, it's going to be during nighttime mostly. Essentially, it'll just be random pieces of text chosen from a list that will be shouted out and can react to the gameplay. So what we need is a reaction system. Critical hit, maybe? Critical hit reaction event. Critical damage on player reaction event. Yeah, stuff like that. So that's kind of it's gonna be it. But essentially, people will shout at you, they'll yell at you, go, "Oh my God, watch out, be careful." Then we have dialogue. Quests will be given to the player through dialogue, and the player can choose during gameplay what shit or not they so quest will be given, but the player can choose whether or not. So essentially this is gonna involve me not having to do dialogue trees. The player does not respond. They just listen. So that's going to be there. And then another cutscene, which will be scrolling text, probably. Cool. There'll be scrolling text. Then we get to the daytime, which you've already talked about. And you do the stuff during daytime. Aha. Upgrades. So, the way upgrades work, or at least how I want them to work, is enemies drop loot. Sorry. Is that enemies drop loot. This loot can be taken to the blacksmith to upgrade weapons. Yeah. And that's kind of it. So it's gonna be pretty simple because we already went over the stuff that weapons can do. Essentially, crossbows determine the time between shots, the number of shots per fire, and the number of enemies bullets can pass through before vanishing. And you can choose whenever you bring a certain amount of loot or a certain amount of enemy resources to the blacksmith on which of these you want to upgrade. Upgrades increase in cost and material depending. I think for now we'll just say cost. Upgrades increase in cost. Every time you upgrade weapons. So essentially, it'll be like a exponential graph. And then you have player attribute upgrades. Enemies drop loot can be taken to librarian to upgrade player. Okay, I'm gonna do something a little crazy. Oh boy, hope I'm not making the game too complicated right now. One slot in the middle for middle click potions/bombs. I'm adding potions and bombs in this sucker. Whoop. Okay, so potion/bomb crafting. Enemies drop loot. Can be taken to Alchemist to make bomba. Bombs and potions. Trap crafting. Enemies drop loot. Can be taken to Barry, who is the tavern owner, to make traps. So essentially these are a lot of the mechanics that we're going to be using. I think this is going to be kind of it. Oh, we are going to have in-game UI. We'll do on the next page. I don't want to do it right now. If for in-game UI, you will be able to save current game or save game, quit game, or return. No, we should return to main menu or quit game. Yeah. So, save and load system before I forget about that. So, what to save? As you can see, I also have some VR mechanics design here, and I'm gonna kind of cheat off of that. Oh shit, this is really good. Oh my god, let me change some things. Hold on. Let me change something. Aha! Haha! Oh, wait. Wait. No. Here, trust me. It's gonna be good. Speed of fire. Rate of fire. That's fine. The player speed won't increase, so that's what I'm gonna do. Endurance will be stamina. Then we have con. Con will be a health. Then we have int, which will be bomb/trap damage. And then we'll have mana, which will be potion toxicity cap. So whenever you have potions, you will have a toxicity, and take too much and then it'll hurt you, or otherwise you can have a toxicity cap that will be able to help you with that, which is we need to have a potion system as well. Potion system taking so potions will increase stat temporarily, or stat for the night. Potions have a toxicity cap amount. If total potion toxicity amount is greater than player toxicity cap, player will die. That's it. So you got to be careful about how much you're taking for that night. Yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of that. That's actually really cool. Cool. So there we go. Another thing, where I was down here for another reason. What was I down here for? What was I doing? Yeah, so save. So for the save, we need to have a couple things. Let's see. So for save, we need to save the items in the stash, which is basically the chest. Need to save the items equipped. Need to save the potions stash. We're not doing armor for this one. I'm kind of okay with not having to worry about armor. Ammo and stash. Equipped ammo. Need to save the day the player started in. Need to save the amount of flesh. Time when you load it, so time will be set to that day. There'll be times to buy again, but the amount of flesh will also be saved, so they won't be able to just reload the day and have the money from or the amount of flesh from that day. The items will also be loaded into player inventory. So this is the save and load system. This is what we're gonna have there. What? Why are you so far away? I don't know what the point that is. Cool. Okay. So this is the plan. Yay. I didn't realize how cool this shit is. Oh, and there's also, yeah, so for potions, this is the stuff that's gonna be there for the potions. God, I've already pre-designed most of this shit. That's pretty cool. Cool. Alright, so this is the planning done, essentially. Okay, so now is when we go into part 2 of, or in the next 2 weeks we'll be going into part 2 of all this, and yeah. This video is gonna be a little bit longer than the previous one. I hope it's not boring for you guys. But yeah. Okay, bye.